Well, we should probably get to listen to some of the storytellers in the making here.
Yes.
And Willa Cofield is going to go first. Willa is a former educator and a video producer, and you were the one who first heard about Paul and Murray on WBAI and then attended a workshop, and now you have your own story to tell.
Absolutely.
What's it like being here on microphone now?
It's just unbelievable that I would just riding down Route 22 in New Jersey on one Sunday morning, I'm hearing the program, and then a couple of weeks later, I'm part of it.
Wow.
It's just wonderful.
That's great. Well, will you tell us your story? And then, Paul and Murray, will you tell us what we've heard in terms of the technical path that Will has taken?
Absolutely.
When I was a child, on almost every Sunday, my parents went to visit their parents, my grandparents. My grandparents lived on a farm about 8 miles from our house near Draper's Crossroads. My mother and father sat in the front and the children sat in the back. And I always tried to sit near the window so I would be one of the first to spot Grandpapa. Grandpapa was usually sitting on the front porch wearing a big straw hat. He had a big white mustache and little pock marks in his nose from the smallpox epidemic of 1914. Near his chair, there usually lay a fly swatter and a walking stick that he had improvised from a sweet gum tree. Grandpapa liked to talk about his life in those Sunday afternoon visits, and I sat on the edge of the porch and listened. I was born in 1860. I was 5 years old when the Civil War ended, and I remember hearing the bells ringing and men in white vests coming into our yard. I heard my half-sister yell, "Go tell old Doc Batchelor he can come down here and pull his own fodder." My mother put me out to work when I was 12 years old, and I decided at that point that one day I would own my own farm and be my own boss. I went to Wayman School, where we learned to read and write and figure. I met Mary there. I loved the singing class. I enjoyed it, and I found out why most people couldn't sing. To sing, you have to be willing to mess your face up. You have to be willing to look ugly. I married Mary, and we raised 15 children, 8 girls and 7 boys. By working from sun up to sundown, I cleared land and I bought land and put this farm together. My goal was to give each one of my children 100 acres.
Will is thinking.
Yes, I'm trying to get to the next part. About this time, my grandfather would turn to my father and say, "Thomas, would you go in the house and look under my bed and bring out a watermelon?" And my father would return to the porch with the watermelon. My grandfather would slice it. "Come on, children, come taste what real watermelon tastes like." Long before we would leave, my grandfather would give us a basket and say, "Children, go down to the orchard and see if those apples are ripe. I think you could fill this basket, pick the good ones off the ground, and then, if it's not full, climb the tree and pick other apples. I loved Grandpapa's apples. He grew the only apples that were banana flavored that I had come in touch with. In the summertime, I could go and spend several days with Grandpapa once in a while. On one of the occasions, a terrible storm came up, and Grandpapa grabbed my hand. Come on, let's go to the storm shelter. He called, Mary, come with us. There's going to be a terrible storm. We sat in the shelter, and Grandpapa told me about how when my mother was growing up, that he tried to grow everything at home, to live at home. I went to see Grandpapa at the hospital in late 1954, in the summer of 1954, and he was ready to go home. He said, "Get my pants and my hat out of the closet and take me home." I did as I was instructed, and 2 weeks later, he died.
Wow.
Thank you.
What to hear a story about someone who was actually a slave and experienced being freed is so amazing. And, just to also listen to all these details that you've got. You're so fortunate, Willa, that you have all these details about your grandfather that you experienced firsthand, like the white vests and the watermelon and the straw hat.
And the pockmarks in the nose.
Right.
And
the stick next to his bed. Amazing.
So rich
and
with
you were
detail.
able to become your grandfather.
Well,
I
tried.
Well, if we were in the storytelling workshop, we would elaborate on some of the techniques that she was using, which is that she was using the use of detail, and she was also using direct quotation of another person, so that she actually became him and really transported us back to that moment in time.
So using actual quoted dialogue stimulates the story and makes it more alive.
Yeah.
Always.
Absolutely. Dialogue does two things.
Right.
It drives the characters, so it elaborates the characters, and it drives the action forward. So any playwright or screenwriter will tell you exactly the same thing. Use dialogue to actually move your story forward. And Willa does that absolutely brilliantly.
Oh, that was wonderful. Thank you, Willa.